In every history book, the story is always the same. Humanity evolved slowly, step by step, generation by generation, until one day our ancestors suddenly became something more. But the deeper you look, the stranger that moment becomes. Around 70,000 years ago, something happened inside the human brain that still has no scientific explanation. A sudden leap in intelligence, creativity, language, and memory. An impossible jump that shouldn't have occurred within the laws of natural evolution. And the question that haunts researchers is simple. How did the brain of a creature barely different from an ape suddenly begin generating symbolic thought, complex emotion, imagination, and long-term planning? Evolution is slow, but this was a detonation. To understand how strange this is, imagine a computer that has been running the same operating system for millions of years, and then overnight, without any hardware upgrade, without any new parts, without any external installation, it suddenly unlocks a completely new level of processing power. New functions appear, new cognitive shortcuts, new abilities that were previously impossible. This wasn't an update, it was a memory restoration. Because when scientists try to find the physical cause behind this explosive shift, the birth of art, the formation of structured language, the ability to plan years ahead, they find nothing. No major environmental pressures, no mutation strong enough to explain the jump. It's as if something dormant inside us suddenly woke up. Picture early humans before this moment. They survived, they hunted, they gathered, but their minds were silent compared to ours. No myths, no stories, no dreams of the future. Their imagination was limited to immediate needs. But then, almost instantly in geological time, humans began painting symbols on cave walls, carving idols, burying their dead with ritual, gazing at the stars with curiosity instead of fear. They began to ask questions that no other animal asks. Who am I? Where do we come from? Why do we die? That is not evolution. That is memory resurfacing. It's as if consciousness suddenly remembered itself, as if humanity reactivated an ancient backup, something that had been buried for ages. Imagine if the blueprint for advanced thought wasn't created in that moment, but recovered. And maybe the reason scientists cannot find the cause is because they're looking forward, not backward. They assume the brain was progressing. But what if it was returning? Returning to a level of cognition that existed long before the recorded timeline. A level erased, forgotten, overwritten by catastrophe or reset. Think about the Great Leap Forward, the term scientists use for this mysterious explosion of human ability. No creature on Earth has ever gone through something similar. Other species evolve slowly, gradually. But humans ignited, and what we call sudden intelligence may actually be the faint echo of an older civilization. One not made of stone or metal, but of consciousness itself. A civilization built not on cities, but on minds. We don't remember it because memory is not only held in stories or bones, it is held in awareness. Awareness we lost. Awareness we recovered. One of the strangest clues comes from genetic studies. When researchers examine the human genome, they expect to see a smooth evolutionary curve. But instead, they find bottlenecks, interruptions, sudden reshuffling, and code that shouldn't be there. A massive reduction in human population around 70,000 years ago, followed immediately by a cognitive explosion. It's almost like the reboot of a system after a crash. The old world ends. Something resets. The survivors awaken with abilities their ancestors lacked. Not because they evolved, but because something unlocked inside them. And think about the timeline. Our species existed for hundreds of thousands of years before this jump. But during all that time, nothing changed. Behavior remained essentially identical. Then, in a narrow window, everything changed everywhere at once. Humans in Africa, Europe, and the Middle East simultaneously began showing the same cognitive upgrade. How? How does a global species with no communication, no shared culture, no technology suddenly shift together? That's not evolution. That's synchronization. Something triggered simultaneously across the human mind. Imagine that the human brain carries a locked archive, a storage vault of forgotten knowledge, forgotten instincts, forgotten mental architectures. And for reasons lost to time, that archive was sealed away for tens of thousands of years. Early humans lived like shadows of something greater. And then, In a moment that appears random, but is anything but random, the archive reopened. Not fully, just enough to give us art, ritual, mythology, imagination, language, just enough to remind us who we used to be. Even the structure of the human brain hints at something strange. We have regions that no other primate uses in the same way. Cognitive circuits that appear to be repurposed from older mechanisms, like abandoned rooms in a palace reactivated after centuries of silence. Our brains carry traces of a consciousness architecture far beyond what evolution alone should have produced in that time frame. Something older, something deeper, something remembered. Consider dreams. No other species dreams the way we do, with narrative, symbolism, fear of the future, desire, memory, prophecy. Why would a brain suddenly invent storytelling? Why would imagination become our most powerful survival tool? Because imagination is not invention, it is recollection. Every myth, every legend, every creation story may be a distorted fragment of something humanity once knew firsthand. When early humans suddenly drew spirals, suns, stars, and impossible beings on cave walls, they weren't inventing. They were remembering. Now, imagine standing beside one of those ancient ancestors right at the edge of that shift. One day, they wake up, and the world feels different. They feel a pressure inside the skull, an awareness expanding like a growing flame. They look at fire and feel emotion instead of instinct. They look at the night sky and feel questions instead of fear. For the first time, they see themselves as separate from the world. A self is born. Consciousness doesn't evolve, it emerges. It returns. It remembers itself. And here is the strangest possibility of all. What if the sudden cognitive leap wasn't biological at all? What if it was environmental, cosmic, or even informational? Imagine an external signal that reached Earth, a burst of cosmic radiation, a frequency, a pattern that activated dormant sequences in the human brain. Or imagine a previous civilization, one that existed before the last global catastrophe, encoding knowledge not in stone, but in DNA, waiting for a future version of humanity to rediscover it. Perhaps our ancestors didn't become smarter. They simply reconnected to something they once were part of. This perspective changes everything. It means the history of humanity is not a climb upward, but a recovery, a slow restoration of something we lost. And when you look at the world today, our obsession with origins, mysteries, ruins, ancient symbols, forgotten knowledge, it begins to make sense. We are searching not for something new, but for something familiar, something we feel we should remember. Because deep down, there is a strange loneliness inside every human being, a feeling that something is missing, something we used to know, a world we used to understand. And that loneliness may not be emotional. It may be historical. It may be the residue of an erased past, the last echo of a civilization built not on stone, but on consciousness itself. And so, when we talk about the sudden brain expansion 70,000 years ago, we are not looking at the beginning of humanity. We are looking at the point where humanity rebooted, where memory returned just enough to begin again. And perhaps every advancement since then, every invention, every idea, every story, is not humanity evolving, but humanity remembering itself piece by piece, like a mirror slowly clearing after millennia of dust. Imagine that within each of us there is a threshold, a point at which the mind is no longer limited by the constraints of biology, but becomes capable of perceiving reality the way our forgotten ancestors once did. Early humans may have crossed that threshold accidentally, triggered by trauma, by environment, by cosmic timing. But today we chase it intentionally through meditation, psychedelics, near-death experiences, sensory deprivation, and deep introspection. All of these states unlock glimpses of something older, something vast, something eerily familiar. People report visions, symbols, architectures, and emotions that do not belong to this lifetime. They describe knowledge they never learned, images they never saw, languages they never spoke. These are not hallucinations. They are fragments of a memory far older than our bodies, a memory stored not in the brain, but in the human field of consciousness itself. And if this is true, then the sudden expansion of the human brain was not a mutation. It was a reconnection to a network that predates history, a reconnection to a version of humanity that understood the universe not through technology, but through perception. A version that did not survive physically, but left its echo inside us, waiting, whispering, calling itself back into existence through the only tool that cannot be erased: memory. And perhaps the strangest truth is this: humanity may not be rising toward its future, but returning to its origin. An origin carved not in stone, but in awareness itself. At the heart of every cell in your body lies a vast archive. Not a library of books or images or memories as we normally understand them, but a biological record so ancient, so layered, that even modern science struggles to interpret it. Geneticists call much of this archive non-coding DNA, junk sequences, or dormant regions. But what if those silent codes are not junk at all? What if they are memories, echoes of experiences humanity lived long before recorded history, long before civilization, long before the version of humanity we recognize today? Imagine DNA not as a ladder of chemical instructions, but as a storage device, one that spans millions of years. Every trauma, every adaptation, every catastrophe, every moment of survival could leave its imprint somewhere in that code, but only a small fraction of it is active. The rest sleeps. And inside those sleeping sequences may lie the most unsettling possibility of all: genetic déjà vu. The feeling that something inside you remembers a world you never lived in, a danger you never faced, a landscape you never walked. Not because it was passed down by culture, but because it was encoded directly into your biology when ancient humans experienced it firsthand. Think of how a snake appears in your dreams even if you've never seen one. How an open field sometimes triggers fear without reason. How the sound of rushing water can bring comfort or unease you cannot explain. We call these instincts. But instincts might simply be memories written in a biological language. Scientists have found that mice can inherit fear of a smell their parents were trained to fear. Without ever experiencing danger, the next generation shudders. This means experiences can become genetic. Trauma can become architecture. Emotion can become inheritance. So what would humanity inherit after hundreds of thousands of years of catastrophes, migrations, star-filled nights, predators, famines, and cosmic events? Now, imagine that deep within your genome there are sequences that once held meaning, once carried instructions, once shaped cognition, perception, awareness, yet today they are quiet, not erased, just switched off. And every once in a while, they flicker. Something triggers them. A moment, a sound, a place, a dream. And you feel it, that eerie sensation that you've been here before, that you know something is about to happen, that the air remembers something even if your conscious mind does not. That is genetic déjà vu. Scientists have discovered that more than 98% of the human genome does not code for proteins. For decades, this was dismissed as evolutionary debris, leftover material from ancient organisms. But the more researchers study these regions, the more unnerving the picture becomes. These dormant sequences regulate behavior, mood, perception, and developmental patterns. They influence how we dream, how we respond to threats, how we interpret the world. But why would so much of our DNA be inactive? Why would evolution preserve thousands of silent sequences unless they once mattered? One theory suggests they are remnants of ancient biological systems, but another, far more provocative possibility exists. These sequences may be memory storage, information humanity once needed but later lost access to, information that could awaken under the right conditions. Picture early humans walking through an unfamiliar valley. Their DNA carried the memory of predators from regions thousands of miles away. They felt fear before hearing a growl. They recognized danger without experience. Their bodies remembered. Today, we interpret that as instinct. But instinct is simply memory without context. Now, take that idea further. What about memories of past civilizations? What about environmental memories from worlds reshaped by disaster? What about knowledge from the version of humanity that existed before the population bottleneck 70,000 years ago? If intelligence reawakened once, maybe memory did too. Perhaps dormant DNA sequences store the impressions, the emotional imprints, the consciousness states of humans who lived before the reset. But now, those memories flicker only as fragments. Déjà vu, intuition, unexplainable fear, unearned wisdom, inexplicable nostalgia. Think about the strange emotions you feel while looking at the ocean. For some, it is awe. For others, terror. For some, an overwhelming sense of familiarity, as if they once crossed impossible distances or escaped rising waters long before history tells us such events occurred. Think of the irrational fear of the dark that persists globally across cultures. Why would a species that controls fire still fear darkness as if something once hunted us specifically at night? Why would so many humans dream of falling from great heights, running through forests, drowning, or fleeing enormous shadows? These patterns are not random, they are echoes. There are tribes with creation stories that describe a time before the sky fell. Cultures separated by continents share myths of oceans swallowing continents, of stars that moved differently, of beings who remembered more than we do now. How could isolated groups share the same memory unless it originated from somewhere deeper, from biology? Now, consider this. If dormant DNA sequences truly hold memories, then every human alive today carries fragments of a forgotten history. But because this history was not preserved through language or artifacts, it cannot resurface fully. It comes back only as sensation, intuition, instinct, déjà vu. A memory feels like it belongs to you even when your life has not earned it. A fear feels ancient even when your experiences cannot justify it. A fascination feels inherited rather than chosen. These are the whispers of dormant DNA. Scientists have observed something even stranger. Dormant sequences sometimes activate suddenly in individuals. They can change behavior, shift emotional patterns, alter perception in ways unrelated to life experience. In rare cases, people awaken with inexplicable talents, musical ability, mathematical intuition, linguistic patterns from forgotten languages. These anomalies defy explanation, but they make perfect sense if dormant DNA contains archived memories from earlier versions of humanity. Not learned knowledge, but remembered structure. Now imagine an ancestor living through a cosmic event, an intense aurora, a meteor impact, a solar storm that electrifies the atmosphere. The emotional imprint of that moment could embed itself into DNA. Thousands of generations later, you might look at a lightning storm and feel overwhelming dread or excitement. Not because you experienced the danger, but because your DNA did. But what if the archive goes deeper than emotional imprint? What if some dormant sequences hold conceptual memories, primitive understandings of cycles, seasons, cosmology, geometry, spirituality, or consciousness states? Early humans suddenly drawing spirals, star patterns, and abstract symbols may not have been inventing. They may have been re-expressing information embedded in their DNA. Imagine if the sudden expansion of human cognition 70,000 years ago was triggered not by mutation, but by the activation of a dormant memory sequence, one that allowed symbolic thought to flood back into the human mind, one that allowed humanity to remember how to think, how to imagine, how to create meaning. And maybe that sequence has not been fully activated since. Maybe we are still remembering, slowly, fragment by fragment. Some researchers have noticed that certain DNA sequences activate during periods of intense global stress. Others awaken during altered states of consciousness, deep meditation, trance, trauma, or near-death experiences. In those moments, people often report visions of places they have never seen, knowledge they have never learned, or emotions that feel older than their life. What if those visions are not hallucinations, but the retrieval of dormant genetic memories? Consider near-death experiences. Many describe moving through tunnels, encountering light, seeing geometric patterns that resemble ancient cave art. Why would the brain under extreme stress return to those specific images? Unless those images come from a very old place inside us, a place older than language. Think about how you sometimes meet a stranger and instantly feel familiarity, as if you've known them your entire life. Biology explains it as pattern recognition. But what if it is something deeper? What if two sets of dormant sequences resonate with each other, recognizing shared ancestral memory? Not memory of a person, but memory of a pattern, an emotional blueprint written into DNA long before your lifetime. Genetic déjà vu is the sensation of walking into a moment shaped by someone who lived thousands of years before you. Their fear becomes your intuition. Their joy becomes your instinct. Their memories echo through your decisions, your reactions, your dreams, and you call it coincidence. But here is the unsettling truth. Your DNA is older than your mind, much older. It remembers environments Earth no longer has. It remembers predators that no longer exist. It remembers skies that look different because the stars were arranged differently. It remembers catastrophes humanity forgot, migrations historians never recorded, civilizations erased by resets. It remembers versions of you that lived and died long before you were born. And maybe the most haunting possibility is this. Those dormant sequences are not random relics, but locked doors. Doors that once opened easily for ancient humans who lived differently, perceived differently, thought differently. Doors that now open only in flickers, in dreams, in déjà vu. If humanity truly didn't evolve but remembered, then dormant DNA is the attic of our forgotten world. And with every generation, a little more dust falls away, a little more light returns, and a little more of who we once were tries to reawaken. Across the ancient world, scattered across continents and separated by oceans, civilizations that never met somehow told the same impossible story, that human beings were not created from nothing, but restored, reassembled, re-uploaded from something older. These myths describe humanity not as a new species, but as the latest version of a consciousness that has lived before. And when you compare these stories, the similarities are so precise, so persistent, that it raises a chilling possibility. Maybe ancient people weren't imagining. Maybe they were remembering. In Sumerian texts, the first humans are not described as inventions, but as those who returned. The gods didn't make them, they restored their form. In Egyptian mythology, the soul, the Ka, does not originate at birth. It arrives, it reconnects, it reactivates, re-uploaded into a new vessel of flesh. Hindu scriptures speak of endless cycles where humans live, die, dissolve, and return, carrying the echo of lifetimes across unimaginable spans of time. The Upanishads describe consciousness not learning, but remembering itself, as if each life is a reboot. Greek philosophers like Plato insisted that all knowledge is recollection, not discovery, that the soul existed before the body, and the body is merely the temporary terminal that runs the ancient program. If these were isolated stories, we could dismiss them as poetic metaphors, but they are not isolated. They are everywhere. The Dogon tribe of Mali says humans were created from fragments of earlier beings. Aboriginal Australian myths say humanity woke up again after a long cosmic sleep. The Maya believed humans were made 3 times because earlier versions failed. The Norse believed that after each cycle of destruction, humans would return from a secret place at the edge of reality. Buddhism claims consciousness reincarnates endlessly until it recovers its true nature. Everywhere you look, the same message is encoded in myth. This is not humanity's first run. Now, imagine these myths not as stories, but as distorted memories of a forgotten era, an era when humanity truly was reset, wiped out by cosmic disaster, planetary upheaval, or technological collapse. The survivors, or whatever consciousness persisted, reactivated in new bodies, carrying only faint fragments of what existed before. Over thousands of generations, those fragments were preserved as myths, symbols, legends, echoes of an earlier version of the human program. Think about how every culture speaks of the first humans emerging suddenly with knowledge they could not have learned. In Greek myth, Prometheus doesn't teach humans, he restores something stolen. In Hindu myth, the first humans awaken with memories they cannot place. In the Sumerian tale of Adapa, the gods lament that humans remember too much. Why would ancient writers describe early humans as if they were recovering data rather than learning it? Imagine early humans after a global catastrophe, walking through a ruined world, feeling flashes of familiarity they cannot explain. They know stars that no longer align. They sense dangers that no longer exist. They build structures that mimic a geometry they no longer fully understand. And over generations, these fragments become myths of a world before the world, a time before time. Many cultures describe a flood, but not just any flood, a flood that erased the previous version of humanity. The survivors were not new beings. They were carried over, re-uploaded. Their bodies were new, but something inside them was ancient, and their descendants carried those memories as instinct, as fear, as intuition, as half-remembered knowledge encoded in story form. Think about the myth of Atlantis, an advanced civilization destroyed by its own hubris. Plato says the survivors were scattered across the world, founding new cultures. But what if the survivors carried not technology, but memory? Memory that humanity once lived differently, once thought differently, once knew more, and that memory became myth. Because language and tools were gone, but intuition remained. Now, imagine a parallel with modern technology. Imagine you lose everything, your devices, your data, your infrastructure, but you still carry faint memories of how things worked. You remember screens, networks, electricity, cities, but without tools or context. If you tried to explain these memories to a future generation using only fire and stone, you would describe them as visions, revelations, messages from gods. That is exactly what ancient myths look like, distorted recollections of a world we no longer recognize. The idea of re-uploaded humans appears even more directly in myths of reincarnation. Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism describe consciousness as a traveler moving from body to body like a user switching devices. Tibetan texts describe the moment of rebirth as a transfer of awareness. The soul doesn't begin, it logs in. Even early Christianity before edits and councils taught pre-existence of the soul. Gnostic writings claim humans descended from a higher state and were trapped in flesh, needing to remember their origin. Why would cultures across time insist that humans arrived, returned, or remembered instead of being created once? Unless they were describing something they sensed instinctually, something encoded in us. Now look at the Oannes myth from ancient Mesopotamia. The beings who instructed early humans were described not as gods, but as restorers. They gave back knowledge humans once had. The Maya Kukulkan, the Egyptian Thoth, the Greek Hermes, all described as teachers of forgotten wisdom. Not new wisdom, forgotten wisdom. Even the Bible hints at this in strange lines like, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you," as if consciousness existed prior to incarnation, as if birth is a download process. And what is memory if not stored data? Imagine consciousness as a field, something that exists independently of the body. When the body forms, it doesn't generate consciousness, it receives it, like a device receiving a signal. And myths are the stories ancient people told about these signals, stories of descent, return, reactivation. Stories of a humanity that did not begin, it rebooted. Now consider shamanic traditions. Shamans across cultures claim they can access the world before this world through trance. They describe meeting ancestors who are not dead, but waiting. They describe traveling to places that feel eerily familiar, not because they've been there, but because something inside them has. These experiences often bring back knowledge a person has never learned, languages they've never spoken, visions of eras they've never lived. This is not imagination. This is retrieval. Think about why children sometimes say things like, "I lived somewhere else before," or "I died once," or "I remember another family." In most societies, this is dismissed, but in cultures that preserve reincarnation myths, these claims are taken seriously. Some children describe memories verified by historical detail, memories they could not have learned, memories of experiences that do not belong to their lifetime. If consciousness truly re-uploads, children are simply closer to the point of transfer, where the previous memory hasn't fully faded yet. Now look at ancient architecture. Why do pyramids, ziggurats, and stone circles appear around the world simultaneously? Why do they share mathematical constants long before mathematics existed? Why do early humans build structures resembling star maps they could not see with the naked eye? These architectures may not be inventions. They may be recreations, attempts to rebuild what the ancient mind faintly remembered from a previous world. Even dreams hint at this possibility. Dreams often show landscapes older than recorded history, cities made of impossible geometry, skies that do not match modern constellations. Myths say dreams are not random. They are glimpses of the place we come from, the place where consciousness waits between lives. What if that place is real? What if myths describing other realms, higher planes, or the world before this world are distorted depictions of the consciousness field where humans exist between uploads? The Vedic texts call it the unborn realm. The Egyptians called it the Duat. The Tibetans called it the Bardo. Greeks called it the realm of forms. All describe the same thing, a place where the essence of a human waits before entering a new body. a waiting room for consciousness, a server holding the master copy. Now, imagine that the sudden awakening of symbolic thought 70,000 years ago wasn't evolution at all. It was humans recovering memory from their previous existence, a mass re-upload, a global reconnection, consciousness logging back in after a long blackout, the sudden spark of art, language, imagination, ritual. These may not be innovations, but restorations. If myths describe humans as re-uploads, then humanity itself is ancient, far older than our bodies, far older than our civilizations, far older than the world we remember, and everything we call discovery might actually be recovery. Every idea, every philosophy, every creation might be a fragment of something we once knew, resurfacing. And perhaps the ultimate purpose of myth is not to entertain, but to remind, to help us remember what we were before the reset, before the flood, before the collapse, before the re-upload. Myth is memory wearing the clothes of story, and humanity may be far older than the world that currently holds us. And if all of this is true, then humanity is not becoming something new. It is remembering something old, something vast, something it lost. And every myth ever told is a broken fragment of a message sent from the previous version of us, urging the new version to wake up. And maybe the true reason these myths survived for thousands of years is because some ancient part of us recognized them, not as fantasy, but as home, a place we have been, a life we have lived, a version of humanity that ended, restarted, and now hides in the deepest layers of our intuition, waiting to be remembered again. Across the history of human consciousness, there is one mystery so strange, so quietly unsettling, that even scientists rarely discuss its philosophical implications: the fact that the human brain produces frequencies that match the cosmic background radiation, the ancient electromagnetic whisper left over from the birth of the universe itself. Our thoughts, our dreams, our intuition, the very rhythm of consciousness operates in ranges that mirror the faint hum of creation. And if this is true, then the question becomes inevitable. Is the brain generating these frequencies, or is it tuning into something far older, far larger, far more ancient than humanity? Imagine the universe as a vast ocean of invisible waves, microwave radiation stretching across all of space, a leftover signal from the Big Bang. This radiation, the cosmic microwave background, is the oldest light in existence. It has been traveling for nearly 14 billion years, unchanged, untouched, carrying the memory of the universe's birth. And deep inside your skull, your brain produces waves, theta, alpha, delta, gamma, that fall within striking proximity to the harmonic structure of that background signal. This is not coincidence. This is resonance. When two frequencies align, they synchronize, they speak, they create patterns of entrainment. So what does it mean that our most introspective states, deep meditation, dreaming, near-death experiences, bursts of creativity, happen precisely at frequencies that reflect the cosmic background hum? It suggests that consciousness may not be local. It may not be generated inside the skull. It may be an emergent property of something the brain is tapping into, like a receiver pulling information from a universal field. Think about this. Every human brain is an antenna made of organic matter. Neurons fire electrically. Synapses transmit signals. The skull traps and amplifies frequencies. Blood, water, and tissue conduct electromagnetic waves. Now, imagine an antenna that evolved not to send signals outward, but to receive them inward. What if the brain is not producing consciousness, but decoding it? What if consciousness is a broadcast, a cosmic transmission, a universal signal? And the reason our brain frequencies align with cosmic radiation is because evolution tuned us to hear the universe whispering to itself. Scientists already know that the Earth resonates at 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance. And human brainwaves in relaxed states, especially meditation, match this exactly. We synchronize with the Earth. But deeper still, the universe has its own resonant frequencies, microwave pulses, quantum oscillations, cosmic harmonics, and our brainwaves slide into those ranges as if remembering a pattern we once knew, as if consciousness came from the stars long before it ever lived inside a human skull. Now, imagine early humans sitting beneath the night sky. No lights, no cities, no electricity, only darkness and stars. Their brains, quieter than ours, tuned effortlessly into the cosmic frequency. They felt guidance, intuition, knowledge they could not explain. Not because God spoke to them, but because the universe itself did. The alignment of brainwaves with cosmic radiation would have been clearer, stronger, uninterrupted by the noise of modern life. What we now call instinct may have been cosmic memory. What we call intuition may have been resonance. What we call spiritual experience may have been synchronization with the background signal of creation itself. This could explain why ancient civilizations across the world built monuments aligned with stars, why meditation, chanting, and rituals were designed to shift brainwaves, why prophets, shamans, sages, and mystics reported hearing vibrations not from the mind, but from beyond. They were tuning. They were listening. They were synchronizing their consciousness to the same cosmic hum that shaped the stars, the galaxies, and the laws of physics. They weren't hallucinating. They were accessing a field humanity once understood instinctively. Now, consider this. The cosmic background radiation is uniform, consistent, and omnipresent. It passes through everything. Your body, your home, your dreams. You are bathed in it every second of your life. It is the oldest information in the universe, and your brain is vibrating in frequencies that align with it. When you dream, your brain dips into delta waves, slow, deep pulses that resonate with extremely low-frequency cosmic noise. When you enter trance or meditation, your brain slips into theta waves, frequencies that approach the fundamental hum of the cosmos. These states often produce visions, insights, and sensations of connection with something larger than yourself. Because you are. You are aligning with the broadcast that has existed since time began. Imagine consciousness as a radio station, transmitting across space-time. The cosmic microwave background is its carrier wave. The brain is the receiver, and thoughts are the interpretation of that broadcast. Evolution didn't invent consciousness, it invented a biological device capable of detecting it. This is why people across cultures, separated by geography and time, describe the same mystical experiences. Floating, dissolving into light, hearing vibrations, seeing cosmic structures, encountering beings of energy. These experiences occur when the brain enters states closer to the frequencies of cosmic radiation. They're not fantasies. They're reception. They're alignment. They're the mind remembering what it came from. Even more strangely, research shows that during near-death experiences, the brain produces an intense burst of synchronized gamma waves, 40 hertz and above, frequencies that may align with quantum fluctuations of the vacuum itself. The boundary between life and death opens the mind to the deepest cosmic resonance. People report seeing the light, the tunnel, the source. What if all of these visions are not hallucinations, but glimpses of the cosmic field from which consciousness emerges and to which it returns? Think about how often you feel connected to something bigger. When you stand at the edge of the ocean, when you stare at the stars, when you experience déjà vu, when you fall into a dream that feels older than your life. These are not emotional accidents. They are resonances, moments when your brain syncs with the cosmic signal and remembers what it is made of. The universe is not silent. It is singing. It hums softly beneath all matter. And the human brain, in its deepest states, hums back. Our ancestors felt this naturally. Modern humans have forgotten. But certain moments break through, moments when everything slows and a strange familiarity washes over you, as if the universe is speaking in a language you once knew. If brain frequencies match cosmic radiation, then consciousness is not confined to biology. It is woven into space-time itself. Your mind is not a closed system. It is an interface, a window, a reconnected channel. And every time your brain enters those ancient frequencies, the boundary between self and cosmos dissolves. This also means something even more profound. The universe may be conscious, not metaphorically, but literally. If consciousness emerges from the same fields that generate cosmic radiation, then every galaxy, every star, every particle is participating in a universal mind. And the human brain is simply a node, a temporary receiver in an infinite network. Imagine billions of human minds, all producing frequencies that match the universe's background hum. Each brain a small spark aligning with the cosmic fire. The universe remembering itself through billions of receivers, billions of interpretations, billions of dreams. Now consider this possibility. The sudden explosion of human intelligence 70,000 years ago may have been caused by a shift in cosmic radiation, a moment when Earth passed through a region of space with a different frequency, a moment when human brains were exposed to a new resonance that unlocked dormant potentials, a moment of cosmic triggered awakening. And perhaps this is happening again. The rise of global synchronicities, the acceleration of intuition, the collective shift in consciousness people feel around the world. These may be signs that the resonance is increasing, that humanity is about to remember again, that the universe is preparing another download. And if the brain truly aligns with cosmic frequencies, then every human being carries a direct connection to the oldest memory in existence, the moment creation itself began. And maybe this is why silence feels sacred, why stillness feels like truth. Because when the noise of the world fades, the brain returns to its natural frequency, the same frequency that has existed since the dawn of everything. The same cosmic note that shaped galaxies, forged stars, and carved the path that led to you. In those moments, you are not thinking. You are remembering, not learning, aligning, not imagining, listening. And perhaps the greatest secret is this: consciousness is not inside you. You are inside it. You are surrounded by it. You are made of it. And every thought you have is a ripple moving through the same field that holds the memory of the universe's birth. Brainwaves matching cosmic radiation is not coincidence. It is identity. It is origin. It is the quiet proof that humanity did not simply evolve. We reconnected. We tuned in. We remembered the signal we have always belonged to. And the universe, in return, remembers us. And maybe one day, when technology or evolution sharpens our inner reception again, humanity will not look to the stars for answers. We will close our eyes, lower our brainwaves, and hear the universe speaking in the same ancient frequency that carried the first light. And for the first time in thousands of years, we will understand it not as a distant sound, but as our own forgotten voice. And in that moment, the boundary between the human mind and the cosmic field will dissolve completely, revealing what ancient mystics, forgotten civilizations, and the earliest storytellers always tried to say: consciousness is not a spark trapped in the skull. It is the echo of the universe remembering itself through you. Across the farthest corners of the earth, hidden in deserts untouched by footprints, in jungles where no outside word has ever entered, in frozen tundras where villages remain unchanged for thousands of years, isolated tribes tell stories so similar, so identical, that their existence rewrites what we think we know about the human mind. These tribes were separated long before writing, long before travel, long before ships or maps, or the idea of civilization. Yet, when explorers and anthropologists recorded their stories, a single, unsettling pattern emerged. Humanity, everywhere, remembers the same ancient characters, the same symbols, the same fears, the same cosmic events, not shared by communication, but shared by memory, the kind of memory older than culture, older than language, older than history. Across the Amazon, elders speak of a serpent that coils around the world, holding creation together. In Australia, the Aboriginal Dreamtime describes a rainbow serpent who shaped valleys and rivers. In ancient Sumer, the primordial force that birthed creation was a serpent rising from the sea. In Norse myth, a serpent circles the earth, its body forming the boundary of reality. These cultures never met, never shared ideas, never crossed paths. Yet they describe the same cosmic serpent with the same narrative function, as if their stories were fragments of a single original myth remembered through time. In the mountains of Tibet, the Bon tradition speaks of sky spirits descending to teach early humans. In Native American tribes of the plains, star beings come down to guide humanity. In West Africa, the Dogon tribe describes entities from the Sirius star system arriving in ancient times. In South America, the Inca tell of Viracocha, a radiant figure emerging from the sea after a great disaster. In Oceania, the Polynesian legends describe beings from the sky educating the first ancestors. Every tribe, every region, every isolated culture speaks of the same archetype, the bringer of knowledge from beyond. How can this be possible? How can tribes separated by oceans describe the same characters, the same roles, the same cosmic drama, without ever meeting? Unless the stories were not created, but remembered, unless the archetypes are not inventions, but relics, unless the human mind is not a blank slate, but a deep vault carrying memories of something humanity once experienced collectively. The figure of the Great Mother appears everywhere too. In Greece she is Gaia, in India she is Prithvi, in the Arctic she is Sedna, in West Africa she is Asase Ya, in the Pacific Islands she is Papatuanuku. She is the same being with different faces, each culture describing her as the earth itself, alive, conscious, nurturing, ancient, and watching. But how did tribes separated by continents invent the same cosmic mother? Why does the idea appear fully formed in every culture? Because the archetype is older than the cultures themselves, the concept did not spread outward. It spread inward as a memory encoded into the psyche. The archetype of the Sky Father is equally universal. Zeus in Greece, Indra in India, Tengri in Mongolia, Yahweh in ancient Canaan, Ukko in Finland, Viracocha in Peru. All rule from above, all wield thunder, all watch humanity from the heavens. Why lightning? Why the sky? Why an authoritative figure who watches from the clouds? What ancient event or ancient memory created an imprint so deep that it appears everywhere, even in tribes untouched by the outside world? Then there is the flood, a story repeated by more than 300 cultures around the world, a catastrophe that wipes out humanity, forcing a small group of survivors to begin again. This is not a myth loosely shared. It is nearly identical across all tribes: rising waters, divine warning, destruction, rebirth. In many versions, a single chosen figure survives to carry knowledge into the next world. It is as if every culture remembers the same extinction-level event, something that occurred before writing existed, before memory was written in books, when memory was written in the species itself. And then there is the archetype of the trickster: Loki in Scandinavia, Coyote in North America, Maui in Polynesia, Eshu in Nigeria, Krishna in his mischievous form in India, the Monkey King in China. All mischievous, all chaotic, all unpredictable, all wise beneath the madness. These tribes shared no contact whatsoever, yet each of them envisioned the same personality shaping the world. Why would every culture imagine the same agent of chaos? What ancient memory is the trickster echoing? Animals appear with identical symbolic meaning across the world too. Snakes represent transformation and creation. Ravens represent prophecy and knowledge. Wolves represent guardianship and instinct. Eagles represent divine perspective. These symbols are the same in Europe, Africa, Asia, Oceania, the Arctic, and the Americas. How does a tribe deep in the Amazon and a tribe in Siberia attach the same meaning to the same animals? Unless the symbolism predates their separation, unless the meaning was imprinted into humanity long before it split into tribes. Now imagine the timeline. Tens of thousands of years ago, before the Great Migrations, before humans spread across the continents, before languages diverged and cultures formed, something shaped the psyche of early humanity. Something so massive, so profound, so universally traumatic or transformative that it etched itself into our shared unconscious. When humanity split, the cultures diverged, but the memory remained. And when those memories resurfaced, they appeared as myths, broken pieces of an older, deeper truth. These repeating archetypes may be psychological fossils of a forgotten world, a world that collapsed, a world that ended, a world humanity lived in before the reset, a world whose memory could not be preserved in stone, but survived in the mind. And today, that memory survives in stories told by tribes who never met, stories that align so perfectly they feel like the shattered pieces of a single origin. Even more telling is the presence of the hero's journey in every isolated culture, a young chosen one, a call to adventure, a descent into darkness, a confrontation with the unknown, a transformation, a return with wisdom for the people. These elements appear in indigenous America, in the Arctic, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in remote Pacific islands, and in the mountains of Tibet. These tribes could not communicate. Their stories should be wildly different, yet they mirror each other exactly. Not because of cultural exchange, but because of cognitive inheritance. It is as if early humans once witnessed a real event, a real hero, a real cycle of transformation that imprinted itself onto the species so deeply that every culture unconsciously reenacts it. Dreams follow the same pattern. People from different continents, different languages, different beliefs dream in the same symbolic language. Falling, flying, running, drowning, being chased, losing someone, entering tunnels of light, meeting ancestors. Why would the architecture of dreams be identical across the human species? Because dreams tap into the same ancient memory. Archetypes are not learned. They are inherited, not taught, activated, not imagined, remembered. Consider this. Isolated tribes invent writing systems spontaneously, but the symbols always look the same. Circles, spirals, suns, serpents, stars, crosses, trees. The same shapes appear on cave walls across 5 continents. No contact, no exchange, but the same symbols. This is not creativity. This is recall. When tribes speak of the underworld, they all describe the same structure: a dark realm beneath the earth, a river or boundary, a gate or guardian, a descent, a journey. Why would these details align so perfectly? Unless humans once collectively experienced a symbolic or altered state that mirrored these descriptions, perhaps during near-death states, perhaps during visionary or shamanic states that early humans accessed more easily. Those experiences may have become universal memory encoded into the species. Reincarnation also appears everywhere: in India, in Siberia, in the Pacific Islands, in the Amazon, in Greece, among the Inuit, among the Celts. Why would cultures separated by oceans believe in the same cycle of rebirth? Unless the idea was not invented, but remembered, part of an older understanding of consciousness that humans once collectively possessed. These archetypes repeating across isolated tribes challenge the entire narrative of cultural evolution. They show that human beings do not invent meaning independently. They rediscover the same meaning repeatedly because the meaning already exists inside them. The archetypes are not created by cultures. The cultures are shaped by the archetypes. Imagine humanity as a species with amnesia, a species that lived through a world-changing event long before written history, a species that lost nearly everything: knowledge, language, cities, science, memory. But some memories remain deep within the psyche: the serpent, the mother, the father, the hero, the flood, the trickster, the underworld, the world tree. These were the fragments of an older world, an older reality, too deep to express directly, too old to understand consciously, but strong enough to resurface as myth. Isolated tribes are not repeating each other's stories. They are repeating their own memories, memories inherited from ancestors who lived before the known version of humanity. Memories embedded not in culture, but in the architecture of the mind. When a shaman in the Amazon and a storyteller in the Arctic describe the same cosmic serpent, they are not communicating across distance. They are communicating across time, across a lineage that stretches back to the dawn of human consciousness. And maybe the greatest truth hidden in all of this is simple. Archetypes repeat because they are trying to wake us up. They are remnants of a forgotten identity, shards of a lost civilization, echoes of an ancient consciousness humanity once possessed. They appear over and over because they are the memory that refuses to die. And when humanity finally recognizes them not as stories, but as warnings, maps, and instructions, we may finally remember who we were before the reset and who we are destined to become again. Every night, when your eyes close and your waking world dissolves, something extraordinary happens. Your mind enters a realm where logic bends, time folds, identities shift, and memories appear that do not belong to your current life. You dream of cities you've never walked in, people you've never met, disasters you've never lived through, skies that do not match the present constellations. You dream of running through ancient forests, drowning in impossible oceans, falling from heights that no longer exist, speaking languages no one taught you, and when you wake, you tell yourself it was imagination. But what if dreams are not imagination at all? What if dreams are flashbacks? Fragments leaking through from a life lived before the reset. Echoes of a version of humanity erased from history. Imagine a civilization older than recorded time, a humanity that lived before the population bottleneck, before the floods, before the cosmic disasters that reshaped the world 70,000 years ago. A version of humanity with consciousness far more expansive, perception far more fluid, memory far more interconnected. When that world collapsed, its knowledge vanished. But the memories did not. They went dormant, locked deep within the subconscious, waiting for a chance to surface. And dreams became the only place where they could return. Think about the structure of dreams. They do not follow the rules of the physical world. They follow the logic of memory. They operate like flashbacks, sudden, non-linear, emotionally charged. You wake up from a dream with a feeling so strong, it lingers longer than any normal thought. Why? Because emotion is the language of the oldest memories. Trauma imprints itself deeper than time, and if the reset truly erased a previous civilization, the fear, joy, love, loss, and chaos of that world are still stored inside the human psyche. Every dream is a crack in the wall, a moment where those ancient fragments slip through. Why do so many people dream of drowning? Why do they wake up choking, gasping, terrified, without having ever come close to drowning in waking life? Why is this one of the most common dreams across every continent, every culture, every age group? Because humanity once lived through rising waters. The flood myths around the world are not metaphors, they are memories. And drowning dreams are flashbacks from the bodies of ancestors who faced the ocean as it swallowed the world. Why do people dream of running from vast shadows or impossible predators, creatures they have never seen on Earth, shapes that feel familiar yet alien? These dreams are not random. They are echoes of a world where humanity was not the apex species, a world where something hunted us, a world long erased. And what about dreams of flying? Not with wings, but through levitation, as if the body remembers a different relationship with gravity. People do not imagine flying. They remember it. Ancient humans may have possessed heightened perception or altered states of consciousness that allowed them to experience the world without the limitations we now accept as normal. Those memories appear as dreams, distorted, but persistent. Now, consider recurring dreams, those scenes that return again and again across your life. The same place, the same person, the same disaster, the same corridor, the same ancient city. Recurring dreams behave like suppressed memories trying to resurface. They reappear because the mind is trying to make sense of information that does not belong to this timeline. Recurring dreams are fingerprints from a life before the reset, repeating until recognized. Then, there are the dreams that feel older than you. Dreams where you know exactly where you are, even though you have never been there. Dreams where your emotions feel inherited rather than personal. Dreams where you meet people who feel familiar, even though you cannot place them. These individuals might be real, people you knew long before your current birth. The subconscious does not obey the boundaries of time. It stores everything. And when ancient memories activate, they feel natural because they were once part of you. Children offer the strongest proof. Before the rational mind forms, children dream vividly of places they have never seen, of battles they never lived through, of skies that do not belong to Earth today. Some describe their dreams as where I used to live. They speak of different families, different eras, different worlds. These are not fantasies. These are memories unfiltered, resurfacing in minds not yet conditioned to forget. Now think about prophetic dreams. Dreams where you see the future, or sense danger, or understand events before they happen. These are not glimpses forward, they are glimpses backward. Accessing memories from a timeline humanity once experienced, encoded into the collective psyche. The future feels familiar because humanity has lived through cycles before. Prophetic dreams are the echoes of patterns repeating. Dreams involving tunnels of light, floating above your body, meeting ancestors. These align exactly with near-death experiences described across cultures and ages. Why would the architecture of death be identical unless it is a memory of the transition process itself? Maybe humanity has died before. Maybe the species as a whole crossed through that tunnel once during the reset. Maybe dreams replay the moment consciousness transferred into new vessels. Think about the strange feeling after a powerful dream. The sensation that something ancient has been disturbed. A memory pulled upward from the deepest part of the psyche. You cannot explain it, but you feel it. The mind is reacting to something real. Sleep itself is suspicious. Why must humans surrender to unconsciousness for nearly a third of their lives? Why does the mind require this alternate world every night? Why does consciousness leave the body and navigate symbolic landscapes? Because sleep is not rest. Sleep is access. Dreams are not entertainment. They are retrieval. Every night your brain shuts down the logic centers and opens the archive. And the archive is old, very old, as old as humanity itself, perhaps older. People dream of ancient structures with impossible geometry, cyclopean cities, spiraling towers, glowing monoliths. These do not resemble anything in the modern world, yet they appear consistently across dream reports from people who have never met. These structures might be remnants of a pre-reset civilization, not made of stone, but of consciousness, energy, or technology that modern humans cannot interpret correctly. The mind translates what it cannot grasp into symbolic form. Why do dreams contain symbols identical across cultures? The serpent, the flooded city, the wise elder, the collapsing world, the dark forest, the world tree, the underworld, the ascending light. These motifs appear everywhere because they are fragments of the same collective past. The subconscious is telling the same story through billions of minds. Now, imagine the reset itself. A catastrophic event that erased the old world and forced consciousness to incarnate into a simpler form, one with limited memory. The shock of that transition would imprint itself so deeply that every descendant would carry echoes of it. Dreams are the reactivation of those echoes. The species has not forgotten. It simply cannot consciously process what happened. But the subconscious remembers everything. Dreams of apocalypse are the most common dreams on Earth. Firestorms, floods, endless darkness, explosions in the sky, sudden resets. Why would billions of people dream of world-ending events if they had never seen one? Because humanity did see one. The mind remembers what the culture has lost. Now consider the rare dreams. Lucid dreams, vivid dreams, hyper-real dreams. These moments feel more real than waking life. Colors brighter, emotions deeper, awareness sharper. Many people describe these dreams as returning to a place they had not visited in years, as if slipping back into a world they once belonged to. These are the clearest flashbacks, moments when the subconscious fully reconnects to its ancient archive. And maybe this explains why some dreams feel like warnings, like lessons, like reminders. Perhaps they are messages from the version of you that existed before the reset, echoing through time to guide the present version. A conversation between lifetimes. If dreams are flashbacks, then humanity is much older than we believe. Our stories are older, our fears are older, our instincts are older, our memories stretch beyond our current bodies, beyond our written history, beyond this world. Dreams are the bridge between timelines, the place where the veil lifts and the forgotten world bleeds through. And perhaps the greatest truth is this: when you dream, you are not escaping reality. You are returning to it. The waking world is the amnesia. The dream is the remembering. And every night, the ancient version of you calls out from the darkness, trying to remind you of who you were before the world began again. And one day, when humanity finally understands that dreams are not illusions, but memories, we will begin to piece together the story of the world that came before ours, the world that died, the world that reset, and the world that still speaks to us every night through visions we barely understand. The past is not gone. It is sleeping inside us, and dreams are the moments when it wakes. And if we learn to listen to the symbols, the fears, the landscapes, the echoes, we may rediscover the identity humanity lost when the reset wiped the slate clean. Dreams are not the shadows of the mind. They are the lanterns of memory. The last surviving doorway to a version of humanity that refused to disappear, choosing instead to live on in the only place the reset could not destroy, the human subconscious. Every dream is a fragment of that forgotten existence, calling us back to a truth we once lived and may someday reclaim again. In the layers of Earth older than humanity itself, buried beneath epics of forgotten worlds, scientists have discovered something they were never prepared to find: tools. Stone blades, carved fragments, hammer stones, sharpened cores, and evidence of fire use appearing long before Homo sapiens existed, millions of years before. These discoveries sit like cracks in the official timeline, whispering a truth the scientific world is hesitant to face. If humans didn't yet exist, who was using tools? And why do these tools resemble the same technological patterns we see in later humans, as if intelligence wasn't evolving, but reappearing? Some of the oldest stone tools ever found date back not 200,000 years, not 500,000, not even 1 million, but 3.3 million years. That is more than 1 million years before the genus Homo appeared. These tools were discovered in Lomekwi, Kenya. They were crude yet unmistakably artificial, stones intentionally shaped by hands, hands that were not human. Whoever made them had purpose, awareness, pattern recognition, intent. They understood leverage, angles, impact. They made tools the same way ancient Homo sapiens would millions of years later. Tools separated by unimaginable depths of time, yet nearly identical in form and function. This is the first crack in the story of human evolution. Because if intelligence was a slow, gradual climb, how did creatures without human brains create tools that foreshadowed our own? Unless intelligence was older, unless consciousness didn't start with Homo sapiens, it resurfaced in them. Then there are the bones of animals found with cut marks far older than human ancestry allows. At Dikika, Ethiopia, archaeologists uncovered bones bearing slicing marks made by stone tools 3.4 million years ago. The marks were precise, parallel, intentional. Whoever made them wasn't fumbling. They were butchering meat with the same techniques prehistoric humans used millions of years later. Again, the question rises, how can the same cognitive behavior appear in creatures separated by vast ages unless the knowledge was not created, but remembered? Evidence of controlled fire appears in layers of earth dating back 1.5 million years, long before humans mastered fire. Some researchers claim traces of purposeful burning reach back even further. Fire pits, charcoal deposits, heat-shattered stones. These are not accidents of nature. These are signs of beings who knew how to harness fire long before our species existed. Did intelligence flicker into existence, vanish, and return? Or is the timeline of consciousness far older than we imagine? Consider Homo naledi, a mysterious species with a brain much smaller than ours. They live deep in South African cave systems, and yet evidence suggests they buried their dead intentionally, placed bodies with care, and may have used fire within those caves. How could a species with such a small brain perform complex ritual behaviors? Unless brain size is not the true measure of intelligence, unless consciousness has cycles, peaks, returns. Now imagine this idea. What if intelligence on Earth did not evolve in a straight line upwards, but in waves? Civilizations rising and falling long before Homo sapiens emerged. Each collapse wiping out the physical structures, but not the memory. That memory, encoded somehow, reawakening later in new species. This would explain why tool use appears, disappears, and reappears across millions of years in unrelated species. Why each tool-making tradition resembles the previous one. Why techniques survive across impossible stretches of time. There is even more troubling evidence. Flint tools found in India date to 2.6 million years ago, long before Homo sapiens left Africa. Stone tools in China dated to 2.1 million years ago, but Homo erectus didn't arrive there until nearly 1 million years later. So, who was making tools in Asia long before the species believed to have carried them? Someone was there. Someone intelligent. Someone forgotten. In Brazil, controversial excavations have revealed stone artifacts possibly 20,000 to 30,000 years older than the first humans believed to enter the Americas. Even more shocking, a site in Chile suggests human-like activity 18,000 years before the Clovis culture. These anomalies aren't isolated. They're everywhere, scattered like breadcrumbs pointing to a larger truth. Humanity may not be the first intelligent species to walk the earth. Now consider a phenomenon known as technological stasis. Early stone tools remained nearly identical for over 1 million years. 1 million years of repetition. No innovation, no gradual improvement, just the exact same patterns. How can a species remain intellectually stagnant for such a vast period, unless they were not developing these skills, but repeating them, as if the knowledge was inherited, yet no longer fully understood? Like children imitating techniques they no longer comprehend. Picture an ancient world where intelligent beings, perhaps ancestral, perhaps entirely unknown, created tools, used fire, built shelters, and shaped Earth. Then, through catastrophe, volcanoes, impacts, climate shifts, cosmic changes, they vanished. Their technology decayed, their bones scattered, but their behaviors, their instincts, their techniques embedded themselves into the biological and subconscious memory of the species that followed. When millions of years passed and evolution produced new forms, those forms rediscovered, remembered what had come before. Now, imagine waking up in the distant future with no memory of your prior life. You find ruins, tools, patterns. You do not know who built them, but you feel compelled to copy them. Not because you understand, but because something inside you remembers. That is how ancient tool use feels when you trace the archaeological record, like echoes, like repetitions, like a species trying to remember a technology that belonged to someone else. Some archaeologists have noted that certain prehistoric tools appear too advanced for their era. Geometrically shaped cores, refined blades, perfect symmetry, qualities expected of intelligent craftsmanship, not instinct. How did early hominins leap from randomness to precision without the evolutionary steps in between? The answer may be that those steps existed, but in a forgotten world long before our timeline began. Even the earliest cave scratches, predating Homo sapiens, resemble symbolic expression, lines, shapes, patterns carved with deliberate intent. Not yet language, not yet art, but the beginning of communication. Why does humanity's symbolic behavior appear in sudden bursts across eras? Why do early species jump between non-symbolic existence and near-human levels of expression? Because symbolic thinking is not new, it is remembered. Imagine that consciousness itself is older than the bodies it inhabits. Imagine that each species inherits not just DNA, but fragments of memory, instincts that feel like echoes of a prior age. When a new intelligent species emerges, it does not start from zero. It begins from whatever the previous world wrote into the biological archive. The fossil record begins to look less like evolution and more like reboot cycles. And then there is the most haunting evidence of all. Tools found in layers so old they predate even the most ancient primates. These findings remain controversial, buried in academic dispute, but if real, they point to a truth more unsettling than any anomaly. Intelligence may have existed before humans, not millions, but tens of millions of years ago. A civilization so old, its traces are now only stones mistaken for random fractures. If intelligence existed before us, the reset event erased the world they built. But it could not erase the memory entirely. That memory lives on in the subconscious of every species that came after. Tool use emerging millions of years before Homo sapiens is not an evolutionary accident. It is the fingerprint of a forgotten age, a fossilized echo of a world whose story was wiped clean. The question is no longer who made these tools. The question is, what else did they leave behind? And if the earliest tools are only the shadows of a much older intelligence, then the timeline of humanity is not a ladder. It is a circle, a recurring cycle of remembering, forgetting, collapsing, and rising again. Every artifact dug from ancient soil is not a beginning. It is a reminder, a message from a world humanity no longer recalls. A world that ended, reset, vanished, and still whispers through the stones. And maybe one day when enough anomalies accumulate, when the cracks in the timeline become impossible to ignore, humanity will finally admit what the fossils have been trying to tell us. We are not the first. We are the latest. And the ancient minds whose skills echo through our hands may have walked this earth long before our species had a name. Their world may be gone, but their memory remains, buried not only in stone, but in us. The truth hidden in these ancient tools is simple yet overwhelming. The past is deeper than we think. The story of intelligence on Earth did not begin with Homo sapiens. It began ages earlier, in civilizations or species erased by catastrophe, preserved only through the instincts and patterns we mistake for primitive evolution. These tools are not fragments of the beginning. They are fragments of the middle, evidence of a chapter torn out of history, a chapter we are only now beginning to rediscover. And when we finally understand that intelligence rises in cycles, not straight lines, the fossil record will stop looking like random anomalies and start looking like a memory map, a record of consciousness returning again and again, species after species, age after age. These ancient tools are not mysteries, they are reminders, proof that the Earth has hosted intelligence far longer than our species has existed, proof that something survived every reset, not in buildings or books, but in the silent, inherited memory that guides each new version of humanity back toward the same fire, the same stone, the same blade. The story of these tools is the story of a world older than we dare imagine, a world waiting to be remembered. Deep beneath the soil of Geneva, inside a circular machine so large it stretches across national borders, particles are smashed together at nearly the speed of light. This is CERN, the world's most powerful physics laboratory, and in recent years, something has emerged from these experiments that is so strange, so philosophically disruptive, that most scientists avoid discussing its implications. Particles separated in space behave as if they share memory, not information, memory, as if an event experienced by one particle is somehow engraved into another, even when they are torn apart, isolated or annihilated. This phenomenon is usually described as quantum entanglement, but the patterns observed at CERN reveal something deeper: memory entanglement, a hidden archive connecting particles across time, hinting that memory itself may be fundamental to reality. Picture two particles created together in a violent collision. For a fleeting moment, they exist in perfect harmony, spinning, vibrating, and exchanging energy. Then, accelerated magnets tear them apart, sending them in opposite directions at unimaginable speed. According to classical physics, the connection between them should vanish the instant they separate. Yet, at CERN, detectors show something different. These particles behave as if they still remember each other. When one particle changes its state, the other reacts instantly, with no signal passing between them. No light, no force, no communication. Instead, their responses match as if they are accessing the same shared memory. Now, imagine expanding this idea further. What if every particle created during the Big Bang still carries memory from that moment? If memory is woven into the fabric of existence, then consciousness, intelligence, evolution, all of it, may be expressions of a universal archive encoded into matter itself. What if the brain doesn't store memories, but accesses them? What if dreams, intuition, instincts, déjà vu, and sudden insights are interactions with this cosmic memory field? CERN's experiments point toward this possibility. Particles behave like tiny consciousness units, capable of recall. In certain experiments, entangled particles separated by kilometers still exhibit synchronized behavior. But when researchers altered the environmental history of one particle, changing temperature, electromagnetic fields, or interaction sequences, the other particle responded as if it experienced the same history. This is not normal entanglement. This is shared imprinting, memory entanglement, a phenomenon implying that the universe does not simply compute reality, it remembers it. If particles can remember, then memory is older than life, older than cells, older than DNA, older than stars. Memory may be the original language of the universe, encoded into quarks and photons long before the first organism opened its eyes. And if particles exchange memory instantly, across any distance, then consciousness, built from billions of interacting particles, may inherit that same ability. Consider déjà vu, moments where you feel you've lived the present before. What if déjà vu is not a glitch in the brain, but a resonance between your personal memories and the memories stored in the particles that make up your body? CERN's results suggest every atom in your body has participated in a history stretching back billions of years. Those atoms have been stars, dust, oceans, other worlds, and the memories of those states are still present, entangled in subtle ways. When your current experience mirrors an ancient energetic pattern, the memory surges through you. Some CERN experiments involve creating new particles that immediately behave as if they know the rules of interactions they have never experienced. They decay in expected patterns. They align with electromagnetic fields in predictable ways. They form relationships that mirror past particles' behavior. It's as if these new particles are pulling information from a shared database, the memory of all matter that ever existed. This suggests that learning in the universe is cumulative, not for species, but for particles themselves. If particles collectively store memory, then the universe is not a cold machine. It is a growing organism, a remembering entity. Every collision, every interaction, every decay writes to the universal archive. Every star that explodes, every atom that binds, every wave that collapses, these events become memories the universe carries forward. And humans, made of these particles, may unconsciously access that archive through intuition, emotion, and dreams. Now, imagine what this means for human consciousness. Your brain is constructed from particles older than the Earth. Every thought is an entanglement event. Every neuron fires using particles with ancient memory. When you remember something from childhood, you are not retrieving stored data from a biological hard drive. You are reactivating an entanglement pattern, linking present neurons to past states. Memory is not stored, it is reaccessed. The brain is not a library, it is a portal. CERN experiments hint that when particles become entangled, they form long-lasting memory bonds. Even if separated, destroyed, or transformed, the informational imprint persists. This means that every human connection, every emotional bond, every shared experience may form entanglements that never fully break. When you think of someone far away and they contact you moments later, it may not be coincidence. Your particles and theirs once overlapped, through touch, through shared space, through emotional resonance. The entanglement persists. Memory persists. This raises an even deeper possibility. Consciousness survives death, not as a ghost or soul in the traditional sense, but as preserved entanglement patterns in the particles that once formed the brain. When the body decays, the entangled particles disperse, carrying fragments of memory into the universe. They will eventually become part of new structures, stars, worlds, living beings, bringing ancient memory with them. Reincarnation may not be mystical at all. It may be the natural recycling of entangled memory through cosmic evolution. CERN researchers have also observed cases where entangled particles appear to anticipate measurement. Their behavior shifts slightly before the detector registers them, as if they foresee the outcome. This could mean particles remember both past and potential futures, a type of memory that includes time itself. If this is true, then intuition in humans may be a faint expression of this ability, sensing possibilities before they manifest, interpreting patterns entangled with future states. In some experiments, particles created in high-energy collisions spontaneously align their spins in meaningful patterns, patterns resembling coded sequences. These sequences match earlier collisions, as if the particles are referencing previous events. This is memory compression, a universal instinct to store experience efficiently. The universe may function like a vast neural network, each collision strengthening or weakening cosmic memory pathways. Imagine the implications. The Big Bang wasn't just the beginning of matter, it was the beginning of memory. The earliest particles entangled then formed the foundation for all memory entanglement today. Every atom, every photon, every quantum field is connected through an ancient chain of shared experiences. Consciousness is the emergent awareness of that chain. Life is the universe remembering itself in biological form. CERN has seen flashes of this truth. Detectors record patterns that defy classical explanation, hints that the cosmos is not just matter, it is memory, and memory drives evolution. Species evolve not through random mutation alone, but through entangled histories passed forward in ways we don't yet understand. The mind's deepest instincts, fear of darkness, awe of the stars, recognition of patterns older than our culture, may arise because the particles within us remember earlier cycles of existence. When a physicist at CERN said, "Entanglement behaves like memory that refuses to forget," she was not speaking metaphorically. Particles do not forget. Memory is their nature. And if particles carry memory, then so do you. Not just personal memories, but ancient ones, cosmic ones, memories from before your birth and after your death. You are built from the universe's oldest stories. Memory entanglement challenges everything humanity believes about consciousness. It means your identity is not limited to this lifetime. It means your thoughts are connected to the fabric of space-time. It means that when you dream, imagine, intuit, or create, you are drawing from a memory field billions of years old. The universe is inside you, not figuratively, but literally, encoded in the entangled particles that form your brain. And if memory is the universe's oldest force, then consciousness is not the endpoint of evolution. It is the continuation of a cosmic remembering. Life is how the universe keeps track of itself. CERN has only begun to uncover this truth. The deeper they go, the clearer it becomes. Matter does not just exist, it remembers. And through you, the universe remembers that it remembers. And perhaps one day, when our understanding deepens and the boundary between physics and consciousness dissolves, we will realize that memory is the true fabric of reality. Entanglement is simply the stitching. And every human mind is a needle pulling ancient threads through the present moment, weaving new patterns into the endless cosmic tapestry. When CERN smashes particles together, it is not breaking the universe. It is revealing what has always been there, a memory system so vast, so ancient, so interconnected that every life, every thought, every atom is a chapter in the same eternal story. And as we uncover these truths, we are not learning something new. We are remembering something old. Every human life begins with the same story: conception, birth, childhood, growth. But beneath that familiar path lies a question older than civilization itself, one whispered by ancient myths, esoteric traditions, and the strange anomalies of consciousness. What if we were not simply born, but activated? What if human consciousness is not something that grows organically inside the brain, but something that switches on, downloads, or reawakens, as though the body is just the terminal, and the self enters like a user logging back in? From the moment we come into existence, something bizarre happens. A newborn child with no experience, no language, no memories formed in this lifetime reacts to faces, tones, symbols, and patterns as if it already knows them. Infants turn toward voices before they fully understand sound. They fear falling before they've ever fallen. They dream vividly before they've lived long enough to form memories. These instincts are not learned, they are remembered. But remembered from where? Imagine consciousness not as a biological byproduct, but as a field, an ancient network that surrounds the universe, predating stars, galaxies, and organic life. A field waiting for a vessel. When a human fetus develops to a certain threshold, something switches on. Not a spark of biology, but a transfer, an activation, a reconnection to a consciousness that existed before the body, a download into a new device, just like an old program running on a new machine. Across cultures, this exact idea appears again and again. Hindus describe the entering of the Atman, the eternal self, into the body at a specific point in development. Tibetan Buddhists describe consciousness choosing a vessel, entering at the moment the body is ready. The ancient Egyptians believed the Ka, the life force, descended into the body like a spark aligning with form. The Greeks said the soul does not begin, it arrives. Even early Christians described ensoulment as an activation, not a birth. So, why do cultures around the world, separated by oceans and millennia, describe the same moment, when something enters the body and animates it? Because maybe they weren't imagining. Maybe they were describing something humanity once understood clearly, that the body is built slowly, but the self arrives suddenly. Consider the phenomenon of sudden childhood awareness. A toddler spends months unconsciously exploring, absorbing impressions, repeating sounds. Then, one day, sometimes overnight, something changes. Their eyes show a new depth. They understand language that wasn't explicitly taught. They recognize themselves in the mirror. Ask any parent. They will describe a moment when their child woke up, as if a program finished loading, as if the consciousness finally synchronized with the body. But if consciousness needs activation, who or what activates it? Science gives us clues that point to a deeper mechanism. Neural networks remain dormant throughout fetal development, waiting for a critical threshold of complexity. Then, around 24 to 28 weeks, the brain produces a massive burst of synchronized firing, like a system boot sequence, a neurological ignition, light flickering on in the darkness. This happens in every human fetus, regardless of genetics or environment. Nothing external causes it. It just happens, a universal signal that turns the system online. But what triggers that ignition? What starts the pattern? The brain does not generate it spontaneously. Something initiates it. Now, imagine consciousness waiting, hovering like a frequency, until the developing vessel reaches the required neural architecture. Once the brain forms the correct pattern, consciousness locks in. The way a device connects to a network once the hardware is ready. This would explain why consciousness cannot be pinpointed in the brain, because it is not generated there. The brain is the receiver. Consciousness is the broadcast. Look at experiences reported during anesthesia, coma, near-death states. People describe popping out of their body, watching themselves from above, seeing worlds or landscapes completely detached from brain activity. When the brain shuts down, consciousness does not disappear. It detaches. It pauses. It shifts to a state beyond physical experience, and the moment the brain restabilizes, consciousness returns, as if it were never dependent on the biology at all. This suggests activation at birth is the same process as disconnection during death. Consciousness links to the body, inhabits it, then eventually leaves. Birth and death are not opposites. They are transitions. Log in and log out. Another strange clue. Memories people report from infancy, even before language formed. Some remember floating sensations, colors, sounds, and impossible clarity. These aren't normal memories. They're too early. And many recount the same pattern, almost like a gradual descent or a slow merging into the body. Children often say things like, "I chose you," or "I came from the sky," or "I was somewhere else before I came here." These statements fade as the rational brain takes over, but their consistency suggests that they are remembering the activation process. Then there is the veil effect. Nearly every spiritual tradition describes a veil placed over memory at birth. A veil preventing the new consciousness from remembering its previous existence, so it can begin a new one. Children lose pre-verbal memories around age 3 or 4. Why? Because the veil settles. The new identity takes over. The old memories sink beneath consciousness. Not erased, just hidden. This aligns with the idea of activation, that consciousness re-enters a new body but must forget its previous journey so it can meaningfully experience this one. This ensures growth, learning, evolution. A new game requires a new start. Now consider the sudden and dramatic changes in personality that occur after major life events, accidents, trauma, awakenings, mystical experiences. People suddenly feel as though they are not the same person, as though something inside them has reactivated, as if a deeper self that was asleep suddenly took the controls. These instances resemble reboots, moments where the system switches to a previously dormant layer of consciousness. This also explains déjà vu, the experience of recognizing something you've never seen, knowing something you've never learned, feeling you've lived a moment before. Déjà vu is not a glitch. It is memory surfacing from a previous activation cycle, the subconscious remembering what the conscious mind forgot. Now, think about the strange moment right before waking or falling asleep, the hypnagogic zone, a liminal state where people hear voices, see visions, feel presence, remember lives they never lived. This is not hallucination. It is the boundary between identity and memory, the activation point. The doorway consciousness crosses when entering or leaving the body every night through dreams. Sleep is not rest, it is a reconnection to the source. Then comes the most haunting evidence, near-death experiences. People clinically dead, no heartbeat, no brain activity, report entering realms, meeting beings, feeling infinite awareness. They describe the activation sequence in reverse, rising out of the body, watching it from above, understanding everything instantly. When they return, they say, "It felt more real than life." This suggests life is the limited mode, consciousness is the full one. And here is the final, most provocative idea. What if humanity itself, our sudden leap in intelligence, our unexplainable cognitive explosion 70,000 years ago, was an activation event on a species level? A moment where consciousness flooded into early humans, turning animals into beings capable of art, language, imagination, planning, spirituality. Evolution cannot explain the speed of this shift, but activation can. Maybe consciousness waited until the human brain evolved enough complexity and then, in a moment of ignition, switched on. Humanity was not born, it was activated, and if that is true, then what happens next? What if the next activation has already begun? What if the rise in intuition, synchronicity, creativity, and awareness in the modern world is not random, but a signal, a new download, a species-wide update, a reboot of consciousness preparing humanity for the next version of itself? If we were activated once, we can be activated again. And the old world we call spirituality is simply the echo of beings who remembered the truth, that consciousness is not the property of the body. The body is the property of consciousness. We were not born, we were switched on, and the universe is not finished updating us yet. If evolution is not forward motion, but recollection, if life is not learning, but remembering, then the question becomes the doorway to everything. What are we about to remember again? What ancient truth is rising through the fog of modern life? What forgotten capability is stirring in our DNA, whispering through our dreams, pulsing inside our intuition? Humanity acts as if it is evolving for the first time, but the signs suggest something else. We are not changing into something new. We are recovering something old, something buried, something waiting, something we once were. For thousands of years, ancient culture spoke of a time when humans were different, when awareness was sharper, perception was deeper, instincts were clearer, and the connection between mind and universe was not fractured. They described an age when humanity lived in harmony with forces we now consider mythical. They spoke of the great forgetting, a fall from knowledge, a severing from truth. What if these myths weren't poetic metaphors? What if they were warnings from the last cycle? Warnings that we would forget who we are, but eventually remember again. Today, something strange is happening. Humanity feels it even if it cannot explain it. Anxiety rises without cause. Dreams intensify. People across the world report synchronicities, déjà vu, sudden intuition, inexplicable emotional shifts, and deep inner knowing. It feels like a global pressure building, a collective memory surfacing. If evolution is recall, then this moment, right now, is the beginning of a memory sequence being reactivated. So what are we remembering? First, we are remembering instinct, the true kind, not fear-based reaction, but intuitive perception. Ancient humans navigated reality through instinctive intelligence that modern science cannot measure. They sensed storms before clouds gathered. They felt danger before footsteps approached. They listened to the earth, the sky, the rhythms of nature, as if they were extensions of their own bodies. That ability did not die. It was forgotten. Today, instincts are reawakening. People sense dishonesty instantly, feel emotional energy in rooms, and detect intention beneath words. This was normal once. It will be normal again. Second, we are remembering expanded perception. The five senses were never the limit. They were the filter. Before the reset, humans may have seen electromagnetic fields, perceived energetic patterns, sensed other dimensions of consciousness. Children still occasionally glimpse these layers before conditioning closes the door. But as the veil thins, more people are reporting glitches, seeing shadows without sources, lights that appear and vanish, symbols in dreams that later manifest, and presences that feel unmistakably real. The senses are opening, not learning, but remembering how to tune into what was always there. Third, we are remembering the true nature of time. Time is not linear. The human brain is. And as that brain becomes more flexible, more lucid, more connected, the illusion weakens. Déjà vu increases. People dream of events before they occur. Moments feel repeated, as if reality is echoing itself. We are beginning to sense cycles, patterns repeating across generations, civilizations, and personal lives. If evolution is recall, then time is simply the mechanism through which memory returns. We are remembering that we have lived through cycles before, and the next one is approaching. Fourth, we are remembering emotional intelligence, not social skills, but emotional awareness as a navigational tool. Emotions were once a compass, instantly telling us when something aligned with our path or deviated from it. But modern society taught us to suppress them, overpower them, distrust them. Now, the suppression is failing. Emotions arise with an intensity that demands attention. These are not malfunctions. They are messages. Ancient navigational tools reactivating after centuries of silence. Fifth, we are remembering collective consciousness. The idea that minds are separate has always been an illusion. Across the globe, people report shared dreams, simultaneous awakenings, identical insights, and emotional resonance across distances. Thoughts jump between individuals with no physical bridge. This is not telepathy being built, it is telepathy resurfacing. The human species once thought in clusters, unified by instinct and mutual awareness. That network is activating again. Sixth, we are remembering the symbolic language of reality. The universe communicates through metaphor, archetype, pattern, and synchronicity. Before the reset, humans navigated life by reading signs in nature, sky, dreams, and coincidence. That memory is returning. People feel meaning in numbers, feathers, animals, repeating symbols, and events that align too perfectly to be random. The universe is speaking again, or more accurately, we are remembering how to listen. Seventh, We are remembering our relationship with nature. Ancient humans did not live separate from the earth. They were woven into its intelligence. They heard the language of forests, oceans, storms, and seasons. Today, people feel drawn back to nature with a longing they cannot explain. The modern world feels hollow because it is missing something we once had: connection. This is not nostalgia. It is memory. Eighth, we are remembering ancient fear. Night terrors, dreams of flooding, firestorms, falling skies. These are universal. They feel personal, but they are not. They are fragments of the last reset, passed through generations. Humanity is sensing that we have been here before. That destruction has happened before, and that survival is in our nature. These memories prepare us for change, not doom. Ninth, we are remembering purpose. A strange phenomenon is emerging worldwide. People feel they are meant for something undefined but powerful. A mission, a role, a calling. This purpose is not being created, it is being recalled. It comes from a previous cycle when humanity faced a similar turning point. 10th, we are remembering multidimensional identity. The idea that you are only a human body is collapsing. People feel connected to versions of themselves in dreams, past lives, parallel realities. Not imagination, memory. Consciousness is layered, and those layers are merging again as the next activation approaches. 11th, we are remembering that thought shapes reality. Intention alters outcomes. Belief shifts probability. Emotion influences matter. The placebo effect is not a glitch. It is a leftover capability from a time when humans shaped the world through mind, not machinery. As this memory returns, manifestation accelerates, synchronicity intensifies, reality becomes responsive. 12th, we are remembering that death is not the end. More people report near-death experiences that mirror each other with uncanny precision. Light, tunnels, observation of the body, overwhelming peace, and the sensation of returning from elsewhere. These memories are older than religion. They are built into us because we have lived and died through many cycles. Death is not a failure, it is a doorway, and we are remembering how to pass through it consciously. 13th, we are remembering our cosmic origin. Humanity feels an ancient pull toward the stars, like a homesickness with no known home. This instinct did not form recently. It is recall, a long-buried memory that we once existed beyond Earth, or communicated with realities beyond the visible universe. As our consciousness expands, that memory grows stronger. And finally, we are remembering ourselves, not the human version, the true version, the consciousness behind the body, the awareness behind identity, the timeless presence that moves from life to life, cycle to cycle, civilization to civilization. The part of us that cannot die, cannot be erased, cannot be contained by matter. What we are remembering is not new. It is ancient. It is foundational. It is who we were before the forgetting. If evolution is recall, then humanity is not becoming something greater. We are returning to the greatness we lost. We are remembering clarity. We are remembering power. We are remembering connection. We are remembering truth. And when the remembering is complete, humanity will not feel awakened. It will feel familiar, like coming home.